China has identified the cause of the
mysterious new virus.
Coronavirus.
There are fears a rapidly spreading virus has reached Australia.
This is a rapidly emerging situation.
Where there are cases, the government can quickly implement targeted measures and focus control efforts where they're needed most.
Together in collaboration with the pharmaceutical companies.
We need vaccines to immunize ourselves.
And then the final solution, which is a year to 2 years off, is the vaccine.
The answer to that is to really close things down.
Hello again, and welcome back to The Abstract. I am your host, Peter Kirby, author of the book Chemtrails Exposed, A New Manhattan Project, and staff writer at Activist Post. Today we're going to talk about the MITRE Corporation. But first, I got to get something off my chest. Why is nobody else talking about the MITRE Corporation? I spent 10 years, $10,000, scores of interlibrary loans, probably upwards of 100 of those, probably 20 visits to the largest book depository of scientific reference material in Northern California. Probably went there about 20 times. And one of my conclusions is that the MITRE Corporation is most probably running the technical aspects of today's New Manhattan Project. Not only that, they built all of it. They built all of it, and now they're running it, according to the evidence that I'm looking at and the evidence that we're going to go over today. I characterize the MITRE Corporation as the lowest of the low-hanging fruit. If you're investigating chemtrails and want to know who's doing it. So, the evidence is just legion. We're going to go over it here today. I don't know of any other person in the anti-geoengineering community that's talking about the MITRE Corporation. M-I-T-R-E, MITRE Corporation. And we're going over it today. This is just one section of one chapter in my book. I'm excerpting a section from my book today to go over this. I originally wrote an article and had it published on Activist Post in 2015. That's 9 years ago, folks. Nobody's talking about this. I need you to share this information. Get it out there. I'm telling you who's doing it. So let's get started. The MITRE Corporation appears to be in charge of the New Manhattan Project's systems architecture. This is kind of an industry term, systems architecture. That refers to the organization and harmonization of all the different scientific New Manhattan Project sub-operations, such as operation of the ionospheric heaters, control of the aircraft, collection of atmospheric data, satellite communications, etc. Systems architecture refers to taking all of these different sub-operations, putting them together, and making them work together to create an elegant end-user experience. The MITRE Corporation has been doing this for decades. They've been putting together all of the large aerospace command and control centers in America since these things have been built. From the National Military Command Center under the Pentagon to Strategic Air Command, SAC, in Nebraska, to the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, MITRE has built them all. MITRE has worked with NASA to develop the Apollo Mission Control Center in Houston, now the Johnson Space Center. So, considering all of this, I ask the question, who else could do it? Who else could be in charge of building the command and control apparatus for the New Manhattan Project? I don't know of any other American corporation that is even capable of doing such a thing. I've never heard of one in the world that is capable of doing such a thing. It should be noted that what we're looking at here, the information we're going over, is mostly contained in their own autobiography. It's called MITRE, The First 20 Years. It was written and published by the MITRE Corporation. It came out in 1979. This is probably the most important book pertaining to the science history of the New Manhattan Project available anywhere. In their self-written and published history, the MITRE Corporation reveals that they were founded in 1958 with about 500 employees from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Lincoln Laboratory to resolve a technical mess made by the previous administrators of a system called the SAGE Air Defense System. Now, if you know my work, you know that the Massachusetts Institute of Technology has been, or the evidence indicates, it's been central to the production and continuing operation of the New Manhattan Project. And the MITRE Corporation came out of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Lincoln Laboratory. And they were created to resolve a technical mess that had become of this SAGE Air Defense System. And we're going to get into the SAGE Air Defense System and the whole evolution of these types of command and control apparatuses. Is it apparatuses or apparati? I'll have to look that up. The MITRE Corporation is all connected to all kinds of groups that are implicated in the New Manhattan Project, such as the Rand Corporation, the Ford Foundation, the original Manhattan Project, Edward Teller, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and it just goes on and on. Although the MITRE Corporation does not specify what their name stands for, it's all capitalized, so it looks like an acronym. So I speculate that MITRE, M-I-T-R-E, is an acronym for the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Radiation Experiment. So now let's get into these type of command and control centers that MITRE specializes in building. And the first one was this SAGE system, S-A-G-E. The SAGE system was another tremendously huge covert effort involving radar, computers, command and control centers, and fleets of unmanned, remotely controlled missile-like jet aircraft designed by Boeing to hit enemy bomber aircraft before they could reach American cities. See, so if the Russians were sending planes over at the time, they didn't have intercontinental ballistic missiles at the time. They had planes that were presumably going to drop nuclear bombs on American cities. So the SAGE system had these, they were like missiles with wings on them that they would shoot at the planes, the Russian planes, before they could drop their nuclear bombs. That was the idea behind the SAGE system. The SAGE system was originally called Project Whirlwind, and Project Whirlwind was about developing automated missile battery systems. And of course, this was developed during World War II at the Massachusetts Institute of Radiation Laboratory, which I go on and on about in the book, Chemtrails Exposed, The New Manhattan Project. It's the second chapter, I believe, Truly a New Manhattan Project. And what was so significant about Project Whirlwind was that it was the first use of centralized computers for air traffic control. And the later SAGE project was founded by MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the Air Force Cambridge Research Laboratories. I wrote a whole paper on the Air Force Cambridge Research Laboratories, which is in my activist post stack, and I recently retruthed it on my Truth Social. They look to be the lab that developed all of the original equipment needed for the New Manhattan Project. There's just tons of evidence for it. It goes on and on. And the furthest back roots of the SAGE system that you can find go back to 1950. And there was a committee called Project Charles, headed by an MIT professor named George E. Valley. John von Neumann, the famous mathematician, was a consultant to Project Charles. And the chief architect of the later SAGE system was an MIT scientist by the name of J. Forrester, who's pretty famous. After the original Project Charles, the SAGE system evolved from something known as Project Lincoln that was launched in 1951 at MIT's former radiation laboratory. And this whole thing has roots going back even before 1950. The earliest official mention of something like the SAGE system was found in the von Karman reports. One of the reports, the von Karman reports, again, this is another thing that's in my book. I think it's in Truly a New Manhattan Project, or either the third chapter or Electrifying the Atmosphere. These were the seminal reports issued, I believe, just after World War II. They were overseen by this scientist by the name of Theodore von Karman, and it had the von Karman reports had a bunch of different sub-reports. One of them was called Where We Stand, and this one sub-report of the von Karman reports wrote of, quote, large numbers of long-range ground-to-ground pilotless aircraft controlled by a central location. And then, believe it or not, you can go back even further and see that Nikola Tesla and Vannevar Bush theorized about such things as well. This is all in my book. The SAGE system was largely discontinued, and then pieces of it were brought into the next iteration of these types of systems because they had all kinds of delays and cost increases during the course of SAGE's development. And in the meantime, the enemy's offensive capabilities switched from bomber aircraft to intercontinental ballistic missiles, which created a need for a new type of system. So it was in the late 1950s when the Department of Defense recognized that the SAGE system was going nowhere and they needed to shut it down. But like I say, going forward, the MITRE Corporation used information gathered during the development of the SAGE system to develop further systems that were more in line with the current situation. The SAGE system produced the nucleus of the New Manhattan Project. The SAGE system produced the weapons system that is needed to carry forth the New Manhattan Project. To carry out the New Manhattan Project, you need an apparatus that's going to be able to do a lot of different things. You need a system that can control aircraft, a system that can take in atmospheric data, a system that can disperse substances from aircraft by remote control, a system that works with the ionospheric heaters or the electromagnetic energy portions of the project. What the MITRE Corporation inherited when they inherited the SAGE system was the nucleus of the New Manhattan Project. And they went forward with it throughout the decades, developing more and better systems that the evidence indicates have evolved into today's command and control operations of the New Manhattan Project. In 1959, MITRE partnered with the Federal Aviation Agency to develop something called SAGE Air Traffic Integration. See, they were still using the SAGE name, even though by 1959 the system was probably pretty much scuttled by the Department of Defense already. But they came forward in the late 1950s with SAGE Air Traffic Integration, or SATIN. And this first system that they came out with, the SATIN system, was, quote, aimed at developing a single unified system for managing all aircraft in the nation's airspace, unquote. Then later, in the late 1960s, the MITRE Corporation came forward with something called PLRACTA. I'm trying to pronounce the acronym here. It's called Position, Location, Reporting, and Control of Tactical Aircraft. PLRACTA. And this was kind of an expansion of the SATIN system. It could control more aircraft as well as ground elements of the control system. This PLRACTA system later became known as SeekBus, and then still later as the Joint Tactical Information Distribution System, or JTIDS. JTIDS is in use today. This is the system to control the aircraft all over the country and, maybe other countries. In use today. It was developed by the MITRE Corporation. There is a JTIDS Wikipedia page if you want to look into that. And so I speculate that today's new Manhattan Project probably utilizes an enhanced and customized version of the JTIDS system. I also speculate that today's new Manhattan Project air traffic control system, this enhanced version of JTIDS that I speculate about, is operated out of NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, because this is the most dominant North American air traffic controller, and it has been the site of intense MITRE Corporation activity over the years. It's also convenient that NORAD is a joint U.S. and Canadian operation, so you can be controlling aircraft over a larger area. My science advisor says that NORAD's command center, this is, word on the street. I can't corroborate it, but this is what I'm told. NORAD's command center for aircraft has actually been moved recently to underneath the new Denver International Airport. But like I say, I was unable to corroborate that, but I found her assertion very interesting. She's really into all these things and probably has some inside sources that she hasn't told me about. That's fine. And then another little interesting tidbit about the MITRE Corporation was that they did a big study that provided a scientific basis for the EPA's 1976 Toxic Controlled Substances Act. To produce this study, the MITRE Corporation worked with the Department of the Interior's Office of Coal Research. Yes, we have an Office of Coal Research at the Department of the Interior. And they worked with the MITRE Corporation to produce a study about possible cleaner uses of coal. And this was the MITRE Corporation working with the Interior Department's Office of Coal Research to investigate methods for doubling or tripling coal production. Now, this is interesting because if you've read my book, like I hope you will, I have a whole chapter titled Coal Fly Ash. Most people who are into this issue know that the world-famous scientist, Dr. Marvin Herndon, has published probably 30 peer-reviewed journal articles, along with his cohort, Dr. Mark Whiteside, the sitting director of health of Monroe County, Florida. They've produced about 30 peer-reviewed journal articles where they talk about how the substrate, the basis of the substance that we're being sprayed with is coal fly ash. That's the ash that rises when you burn coal, the smoke from burning coal. So it's interesting that the MITRE Corporation is working with the government to find ways to increase coal use, coal production, because when you do that, more coal is burned, and so that produces more coal fly ash. Maybe they wanted to make sure that there was enough coal fly ash to run the project. I also find it very interesting that the MITRE Corporation's world headquarters has always been in Bedford, Massachusetts. Bedford, Massachusetts is in the Boston area, and the Boston metropolitan area has an abnormally high concentration of organizations involved in the development of the new Manhattan Project, such as the American Meteorological Society, Harvard University, MIT, and many more. In order to produce an extraordinarily large scientific project such as the new Manhattan Project, it would be advantageous to have a community of some of the world's top academic, research, and development institutions located within a 15-mile radius, all answering to MITRE, the coordinator. The Boston area was the new Manhattan Project's developmental epicenter, and MITRE was most probably the new Manhattan Project's late-stage development coordinator. It would make sense that the MITRE Corporation, after apparently developing this nucleus of the new Manhattan Project, would be the organization to continue to maintain this apparatus. I liken it to buying a new car and getting factory service. You know, these are the people who know exactly what your car needs. And the MITRE Corporation knows exactly what the new Manhattan Project needs because they apparently developed it. So, in conclusion, I'll finish my rant. Like I said, this is just one section of one chapter in my book. The book goes on and on and on and on and on like this, with just evidence after evidence after evidence. If you've read a lot of books, anti-geoengineering books, books exposing chemtrails and things, the majority of them are a lot of rhetoric and a lot of speculation with very little evidence. I'm not going to name names. I'm talking about my work. I'm not really into talking about other people's work. Well, except the work that I really appreciate, like Marvin Herndon and Dane Wigington. And Jim Lee. I didn't forget you, Jim. And there's others. But, you know, it's kind of frustrating for me sometimes because I know what the book is, but then I'm in this conundrum where, see, I've read the Bible and I know you're not supposed to toot your own horn. So I try not to do that. You know, I'm hoping other people are going to do that, but it feels to me that like people aren't promoting my book as I believe they should. I believe that people should share this information, and it should be like a crowdfunding kind of a thing, or an organic spreading of it. I've never once asked for reviews of my book. Not once. For the first edition I did, that was when it was under troll attack. But I have 76 reviews and 5 stars on Chemtrails Exposed, the New Manhattan Project, the second edition, without ever having even asked. Not in an email, not in an article, not in an interview, ever. I've never asked for a book review. And I have no money for promoting the book, I guess, the way other people do. And so I need you. I need the audience to, you know, share this information. Join my Rumble channel. Join my Truth Social channel. I'm putting out truths on Truth Social like all the time. I have like 35 followers or something. I mean, like I say, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I mean, this whole project is sitting there in front of you. It's all exploded. And when we first came across this information that we were being sprayed, we had no idea what any of this was. It was like a closed system, something that was opaque. We couldn't see into it. It's been disassembled. It's all the information that you could ever want to know about the project is in my book. There's nothing that hasn't. I mean, you know, there's details of it that have yet to be exposed, but I mean, it's all packaged up for you right there. Like, please let us not wander in confusion anymore. That's what I'm trying to get at here. I want people to be informed so that you can fight better against this. I mean, in the last week's article, we saw the 8 states fighting trying to go about banning chemtrails, and that's great. But I was listening to some of the activists' testimony that led up to these bills and people who have been involved in these things, and I see that it seems to me that they haven't read my book and they don't fully understand this project. Like I say, I don't want to toot my own horn. I'm not into that. I'm not an egotistical person. But if you don't read my book, you will never fully understand this project because other people are giving you pieces of it. And other people, may give you the whole project in a different way, but it's kind of like scattered over a whole different area. And who comes to mind is Dane Wigington, who's, put all kinds of stuff on his website. I appreciate you. I love you, Dane. But it's not packaged up in the way that I've packaged up the information. That, I've organized it into all these different chapters, or it's like, okay, here's this aspect of the project. Look at this evidence here. This is what they've been doing. And then here's this other aspect of it over here. And then here's this other aspect here. These are all the chapters in my book. Nobody has packaged it up and served it to you on a silver platter like I have. That's no brag, just fact. I'm not an egotistical person. I put my head down. I do the work. I do it for you. I do it for us. I do it so that we can have a better world going forward, so that I can enjoy my life because you're enjoying your life and everybody is enjoying their life. You see how that works? Okay, rant over. I'm going to continue the work. I need your help. I need your funding. I need you to buy my book. Buy it and read it. I'm going to try to have something for you guys every week now, whether it's a new article or some type of promotion. I got some things in my pocket that I can pull out for you. So look for those emails on Sunday night, right? If you're on my email list. I usually publish videos on Saturday night and then publish group emails promoting the videos on Sunday night, because by then it's made into an activist post article usually. And please join my Rumble channel. Please join my Truth Social. See you on the next one.